He said, do not revile or abuse or speak ill of my companions. Because if one of you was to spend the likes of Mount Uhud in gold, and surely you've all seen Mount Uhud. If you haven't been there, at least you may have seen a picture of Mount Uhud, the huge size of Mount Uhud. So if you imagine the size of Mount Uhud in gold, if one of you was to spend that, it wouldn't even reach that amount, this amount of one of them. And it doesn't mean this amount of gold, it means this amount of anything. Meaning that if the Sahaba gave this amount of grain or corn or some seeds or whatever or dates, this amount, then if one of you was to spend the likes of Mount Uhud of gold, and in fact I don't even believe there's that much gold upon the, what's available in any case, but if you were to spend that amount of gold, and you can imagine what that would equal in terms of monetary wealth, literally billions and billions and whatever, if you were to spend all of that, it wouldn't even reach this amount of whatever they spent, whether it's dates, barley, whatever else. And this shows to you that when we speak of the Iman of the Sahaba wasn't with lots and lots of good deeds necessarily. It's not the amount of good deeds, but rather it is the Iman, it's what is behind the good deed, in the heart of Iman and Taqwa and the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why a Sahabi like Abu Bakr can give a single date in charity, by way of example, which thousands of people couldn't give if they gave all of their wealth. They couldn't equal collectively the Iman and the Taqwa, the actions of the heart, the Iman in the heart of the likes of what is in the heart of Abu Bakr. And so this shows, it's a lesson for us as well, it's a lesson first and foremost to show to us that the Iman of the companions of Allah's Messenger is something that is weighty. It is weighty. It is mighty and heavy. Why? Because it is something that originates in the hearts. And it's a lesson for us as well, that when we do good deeds, not only are we concerned with the outward manifestation of these good deeds, like for example, we pray, and we give charity, and we do many other things which Allah has commanded, and likewise we keep away from what Allah has prohibited. That's one part of the deed, and often we forget of the internal aspects, the Iman and the Taqwa. What is it that's driving that good deed? What is it that's driving? What is the Iman and the actions and the feelings of the heart that are driving a person to do whatever he's doing outwardly? And so not only are we concerned with doing those things, but we're also concerned with nurturing and growing and developing what's inside. And that's why you see that many of the scholars of Islam, like Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah and Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, that they have whole works to do with the actions of the hearts, a'malul qulub. And you see that how they are concerned with dealing with the heart. And in fact, if you look in one of the books, I believe it might be Shifa'ul Alil of Ibn al-Qayyim, or it might be one of his other books, I can't recall right now, but he has a whole chapter in which he lists every single characteristic that Allah has given to the heart. Meaning all of the states and conditions with which Allah has described the hearts of humans. And he's maybe listed about 30 or 40 different words which are used in the Quran to refer to the state and condition of the heart. Like blind, rust upon them. And so many different things that is mentioned, both positive and negative. Both positive and negative. So this shows that we have in our hearts an organ whose reality we don't really truly fathom. We don't understand truly the significance of this morsel of flesh that is in our interiors. To such a degree that it can be the case that one man, like Abu Bakr for example, can give a seed or a date in charity, and you could put thousands and thousands of people on the other side giving all of their wealth, and it wouldn't come close to equaling what is with Abu Bakr of Iman and Taqwa behind the giving of that particular particular date. So the point being here, ya ikhwan, is that when we are looking at the virtues and the excellences of the Sahaba, as we see in these ayat, and we see their sacrifice and their iman and whatever else they did, and likewise these ahadith that we are reading from the Messenger that explain the virtue and excellence of the Sahaba, we have to understand that it's not just the outward deeds, it's what is behind those outward deeds, that made the Sahaba so great in their excellence. And that at the same time is a lesson for us, that we pay attention to these issues of ikhlas, of sincerity, of love of Allah, and fear of Allah, and hope in Allah, and tawakkul upon Allah, and all of those states and conditions of the heart that we see from the life of the heart. And it's something that we must attend to and turn to. So after this, we move to a final issue for today's lesson, inshallah ta'ala, which is that now that we've looked at the virtue, the fadl and excellence of the Sahaba, we also look at the issue of the adalah of the Sahaba. Adalah means their uprightness and trustworthiness. Adalah means their trustworthiness. And Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi. So in fact, before we continue, see, when we look at the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, we look at them from many different angles. We look at them because we seek, not only do we look at them in terms of their virtue and excellence, so we read about them and their excellence and their virtues and their qualities and their sacrifices, and we learn from that. This is one aspect of looking at the Sahaba, the fada'il of the Sahaba. Another aspect is that we're looking at their adalah, their trustworthiness and their uprightness, and the fact that they are to be trusted in whatever they convey of the religion, because they are honest and truthful by judgment and testimony of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. That's a second element and aspect, right? Because this now is connected to the transmission of the religion and how it reaches us. And then there are other aspects as well, which Ahlul Sunnah, we who follow the way of the Salaf, that they are distinguished from other people besides them. That when we look at the Sahaba, we also look from the angle of their fahm, their understanding of the texts. So we study the Sahaba because we want to know, how did they understand this verse? And how did they understand this hadith? And this is something that distinguishes the people of the truth from all of the people of the falsehood. Because you will see some of those people of falsehood, like take for example Jama'at al-Tabligh, for example, what they do is they will look just at the virtues of the Sahaba. This Sahabi was kind, this Sahabi was generous, this Sahabi did such and such, this Sahabi used to read the Quran. All of this is to do with the fada'il. But this is not sufficient for a person to be safe in his religion, because what makes a person safe in his religion is that he seeks the fahm, the understanding of the Sahaba, of the text of the Quran, of the Sunnah, of the belief, of Iman. And so these people, you see, they don't look for the fahm of the Sahaba. To them, the Sahaba are just stories that we read. The bravery of this Sahabi, the courage of this Sahabi, the generosity, how generous was this Sahabi. This is what they look at. And as a result, when they neglect the issue of the fahm of the Sahaba, then they start going astray in issues of religion, in issues of belief, in issues of methodology, in issues to do with respect to how to do da'wah. So for us, when we look at the Sahaba, our discussion of them is comprehensive from every angle. So we look at them from the angle of their fada'il, because we want to be like them, we want to emulate them and be like them and have their qualities. We look at them from the angle of their adalah, their trustworthiness, their truthfulness, their honesty, because it relates to the transmission of the religion and the integrity of the religion. We look at them from the angle of their fahm, which is from the most important of the affairs, their understanding. How did they make tafsir of this ayah? How did they explain this issue of belief? How did they deal in this specific situation? How did they understand the text and apply it in that particular situation? All of these things are to do with the fahm, the understanding of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. And this is what distinguishes people of the Sunnah from all of the groups who are astray. Even in our times, the groups who are astray, from the Ikhwanul Muslimin. and the Jama'at Tabligh and the Hizb ut-Tahrir and all those people, because they do not fundamentally turn to the Sahaba and say that we want to understand Islam like the Sahaba understood from the texts, because this is not what they pursue. They pursue something else. That our leader, like for example An-Nabahani, this is what was his opinion and this is what we are following. Right? Even if he's upon batil and falsehood in his belief and his methodology. And they say Hasan al-Banna, this is what he thought, that this is how he thought that the ummah should be, rectified. Even if everything he's outlining in his books is opposed to what the Sahaba understood from the text of the book and the Sunnah. And so on and so forth to all the other people that we see present in our time. So the fahm of the Sahaba is something that is another aspect that we are concerned with. So the point being here that we were moving on to the issue of the adala of the Sahaba. So we're just making this important point at this stage to bear in mind that we look at the Sahaba from their adala, from their fahm, from their fada'il, from all these things, and we don't neglect one over the other or exaggerate one at the expense of another one, because we understand the deen comprehensively. So as for the adala, the integrity of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, then Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi rahimahullah in his book Al-Kifaya, he said, I'll summarize what he's basically saying, because it's a long passage. What he's basically saying is that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Messenger of Allah did not mention anything about the Sahaba, so for example, the verses that we read and the ahadith that we mentioned, let's say there was nothing of that mentioned at all. Let's say we didn't have any of that in the Quran or from the statements of the Messenger. So he says that if there had been nothing from Allah, the Mighty and Majestic, or His Messenger, about the Sahaba, anything of what has been mentioned, then the reality of the matter, the fact of reality, the fact that what they did of hijrah, meaning that whatever facts have come to us historically, the fact that they made hijrah, the fact that they made jihad, the fact that they aided the deen of Allah, and they sacrificed from their wealth and from their persons, and they even fought their fathers and their sons, meaning those who didn't accept Islam, and they fought against their own fathers and the sons in the various battles for the truth, and that they were sincere for the deen of Allah, and their strength of iman, and their certainty, then all of these things would have given us absolute certainty about the adala of the Sahaba, about the integrity of the Sahaba. That all of these things, as a matter of fact, would have established the integrity of the Sahaba for us, even if there had come nothing in the Sharia texts. Right? This is Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi. And then he says, so this would have given us certainty about their integrity, and believing that they are the most virtuous of all of the ones who have been spoken well of. And so to the end of what he said. And likewise, Ibn Salah, he said in his book Ulum al-Hadith, he said that all of the Sahaba have one specific, unique, special quality. The Sahaba have a specific, unique quality, meaning as a whole, which is, he says, وَهِيَ أَنَّهُ لَا يُسْأَلُ عَنْ عَدَالَةِ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ. Which is, so what is it that the Sahaba are unique that no one else has? It is that the adala, the integrity of any one of them is not questioned. Meaning that this is out of bounds. But that the integrity of any of the Sahaba is something that cannot be questioned. And this is something that is unique only to the Sahaba in this ummah. And he says, rather this is an established affair for them, absolutely. Because their integrity has been established by the texts of the book, by the speech of Allah, and by the book, and by the sunnah, and by ijma', by consensus of the ummah. And likewise, Al-Hafiz Al-Iraqi, he said in his book Sharh Al-Alfiyah, said, indeed all of the ummah is united about the integrity of those who never got involved in any of the fitna, meaning amongst the companions. Because the companions here in this passage, there are those who got involved in the fitna, and there are those who didn't get involved in the fitna. So he's saying here that the whole of the ummah is united about the integrity of whoever did not become involved in the fitna, in the tribulation, and as for those who got involved in the fitna, meaning from the time of the killing, the murder of Uthman radiallahu anhu, then he says that all of them are united, that they too, their integrity is also established. And this is due to having a good opinion of them and carrying this upon the fact that they actually made ijtihad in what they were doing. You understand? So this actually is an important statement because as I said to you before, those who try to undermine the Sahaba, they start with the issues that happened between them. And as we said, that these were tribulations brought from people that came from outside. And so those Sahaba were put to trial by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those people of tribulation and trial, those evil people who brought these tribulations, they were just a means by which the Sahaba were tested. And so they made ijtihad, and none of that had an impact upon their integrity. Right? And that's why in Al-Hafidh al-Iraqi, he makes the point here, and he makes it from the angle of distinguishing those who fell into the fitna and those who didn't fall into the fitna, to show us that we make no distinction, that all of the Sahaba, the integrity is established, whether they were involved in the fitna or not, all the tribulations that took place, and those who were withheld and didn't get involved in the fitna. Right? The integrity of all of them is established, except that we say that those who fell into the fitna, they made ijtihad, and their adala, their integrity is established and not to be questioned. And likewise, Ibn Hibban, in his Muqaddimah, in his Sahih, Ibn Hibban, he said, this is because all of the Sahaba, they are Sadah, Qadah, Udul. They are chiefs, and they are leaders, and they are people of integrity. They are chiefs, they are leaders, and they are people of integrity. And likewise, Imam al-Darimi, rahimahullah, he said in his book, Al-Raddu al-Jahmiyyah, he said, فَهُمْ عُدُولٌ, they are people of integrity, trustworthy, upright, and they are to be trusted in. They are to be trusted in from the time of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And whoever disparages them, he is the one who is disparaged. He himself is the one who is disparaged. So this then establishes for us the adala, the integrity of the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. And inshallah ta'ala we'll suffice with this amount for today's lesson. And then inshallah ta'ala we'll continue with the explanation of Sheikh Salih al-Suhaimi in the next lesson, inshallah ta'ala, where the Sheikh, he elaborates upon some of the similar issues. And so we'll go through that inshallah for some further added benefit. So we'll conclude our lesson here. If there are any questions, or if there isn't any questions, we can close and round off there inshallah ta'ala.